through fire with shadows on my heels. Scars turn to stories that taught me to feel. Lost in the silence, found in the flame. Now wear my battle cry without shame. This isn't the end, it's where I begin. A soul that remembers the fire within.
Welcome back to another episode of A Warrior Spirit, brought to you by Praxis 33. I'm your host, Daryl Snow. Let's dive in. And welcome back to another show. And today I have Tish Ross. Tish is a former talk show host. She's a current podcast host of No Judgment Here with Tish Ross, the podcast. She's also an author of Surrender to Rise, the Queen's Edition. And she's just an all-around great human being who's out there spreading the message of what God has to say for her life. And I'm glad that she's joining me here to join me in this edition. So Tish, thanks for joining me.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Daryl, for having me. I love your intro. Every word that comes across the screen it's beautiful.
Thank you. I had the help of our mutual friend Raquel Soto of writing the song, and then I produced the video, and then our other good friend Elena created an intro for our show on Prospera TV Network, and I blended my video that I took and her intro to the show, and kind of blended the two and made that thing. But warrior spirit and walking in community of other warriors is kind of why we're here. So thank you for taking the time to do this. I know you said off camera that it's harder for you to be interviewed than interviewing. So it's nice to kind of turn the tables on professionals and see, how the other side of the microphone feels. Where did you get your Where did you get your start? Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up, born in Fort Worth, Texas, and grew up in a small town, Crowley, Texas. Have 4 other siblings, so there's 5 of us total. And my parents, obviously, they stayed together until they both passed. So we grew up in Crowley, and very, very small town when we moved into it. Probably, like everyone says, there was a gas station and a Sonic and a convenience store, and that was it.
And an oil rig somewhere down the road.
Somewhere down the road.
Yeah. I lived 7 years in Dallas, so I'm kind of familiar with the area. Do you consider yourself a Texan through and through?
It's funny that you asked that. I do consider myself born and raised in Texas. And what's funny, though, is the way that, we are raised, and the impressions that our parents or teachers or whomever leave on us. My father was a Texas A&M Aggie fan, and a Boomer Sooner fan. And so whenever like Texas Longhorns play to this day, I'm just like, ugh, Texas Longhorns, But yes, I mean, I would say I am a Texan through and through.
It's funny you mentioned the football, because anyone who knows Texas knows that high school and college football is second only to the Dallas Cowboys in Texas, unless you happen to live in the South, then it's Houston. But so when you cringe at the Texas Longhorns, that tells me that your dad spent a lot of time watching the Texas Longhorns, and it sounds like you were not a big fan.
No, because he wasn't. And he kept telling us, we are A&M Aggie fans. We are Boomer Sooner fans. And what's really funny is I'm married to, my husband is a Texas Longhorn fan through and through. So anytime they play, it's such a great, it's a great rivalry that we have going on. We love each other, but it's so much fun to sort of play against each other when they're playing.
So what is a young girl in Podunk Nowhere, Texas, how does she stay out of trouble, and how does she, survive the teenage years in middle of nowhere?
Well, I'll tell you what, I am a very authentic person. And by that, I mean, I never wanted to fit in. I never wanted to do what everybody else was doing. And growing up, I think even going to school, I didn't fit in school, but I didn't want to. But I did spend a lot of time on my own. So there was some time where I felt very alone, very lonely. At some time, I mean, depressed because as a teenager, those were really tough years. But at the same time, I if I wanted to do something, I was going to give it 110%. So I tried out to be a cheerleader, and I'm an introvert, but I wanted to cheer. I wanted to be a cheerleader. I wanted to cheer for the fact of being able to be on the sidelines cheering for our team. I loved cheering. And so I knew when I was going to try out to be cheerleader, my hair was really long. I was also on a gymnastics team. And so I knew how to do a lot of gymnastics, things like that. I knew when I tried out that if I cut my hair the way I wanted to cut it, then I probably was not going to receive a lick of a vote. And even at that age, such a young age, it was in middle school, high school, I knew what it took to fit in and to make the team. And then I knew what I was going to do if I made the team. And so lo and behold, I try out and I made the team. I go through the summer, get my hair cut short, like Dorothy Hamill, that dates me, but Dorothy Hamill short. Come back and people are like, what happened to your hair? But I loved my hair. I loved my hair short. And so growing up, being a person that wants to be their true authentic self, um, I sort of became a chameleon when I wanted to fit in with a certain group. I could fit in with any group if I wanted to, because all I had to do was just think like them, act like them. Then towards high school, my years in high school, I didn't want to do that anymore. So I was by myself a lot.
Isn't it funny that our talent means nothing, our look means everything? Because you didn't lose
Yes,
your talent just because you cut your hair, right? And you didn't have less talent if you had cut your hair prior to the tryouts, right? But you had to have a certain look, fit a certain mold, be a certain type, right?
exactly. And after I knew that, I don't know, it was really weird at a young age. I knew that I didn't fit in, but I knew what it took, and I knew that looks, long hair, all the things was important, and that if I cut it off, I wasn't going to make it. And yeah, that's pretty sad that you have to, in this world, look a certain way, be a certain way. I even thought about that when I was in college. I thought, here we have all these women who purchase name brand bags or have to have a certain kind of perfume or just a haircut, and Jennifer Aniston haircut, when she was on Friends, everybody wanted to have that haircut, or Farrah Fawcett haircut. Like, everybody looked the same, and the Lord made us all different. While we bleed the same, we are all different, and no one, in my opinion, no one can be like you, right? I mean, you can try, you can look like, you can act like, but that's not really being your true authentic self. And the Lord has just always told me to be who He made me to be. And while I struggled through it, alone a lot or made fun of, or when I felt lonely, then I would just turn into chameleon and join a certain group. I never lasted that long in those groups, though. I just don't want to be like that, and that's not who I am. So, yeah, it is crazy. Everybody wants to look the same, have the same things, smell the same. I don't know, it's a
Really
weird thing.
interesting because you, even as an introvert, wanted to be in cheerleading, which is extroverted, and even in cheerleading, which is happy, you were depressed. So, and even as someone who wanted to live authentically, you were hiding. So you had all these weird dichotomies going in your life. How did you manage to balance your way through that? Because some people in that situation turn to drugs and alcohol, and others turn
Mm.
to others' things. So, how did you balance your way through all that dichotomy that you were putting on yourself?
That's such a good question. I think I spent a lot of time, yeah, trying to balance, trying to fit in, trying to be, like everybody else, but at the same time in within myself, it's not who I wanted to be, it's not who I was. But yes, I wanted to be a cheerleader because I love the whole idea of cheering. The other thing, Daryl, it's that was really hard was when everybody was going homecoming, every cheerleader, and this isn't, oh, woe is me, but this is what I feel like was unfortunate for some of us, a lot of us probably in this world. I know a lot of men that say that they don't fit in or they didn't fit in when they were in school. But cheerleaders, all the cheerleaders had a mom. All the cheerleaders had went to homecoming dance with somebody. All the cheerleaders that I spoke to in high school had lost their virginity. And I, even though trying to fit in, and even though I was being a cheerleader and doing all the things, I didn't have a mom. I didn't have a date. I was still a virgin until I was in college and 21, 22 years old. So it was, gosh, I mean, as a young kid, there were a lot of days when I cried and cried out to God, like, why me? Why am I so different? Because being younger, thinking, why am I weird? Why am I so weird? But then later in middle school and high school, the Lord just kept revealing to me, you are wonderfully and fearfully made. You are an authentic person. You're different because I made you that way. But during it, I mean, you don't know that when you're young. And like I said, I spent a lot of time in my room crying, a lot of time feeling alone. And I did feel connected when I was cheering because there were a lot of girls there that were cheering. I felt a part of the team, but a lot of times when I was very depressed. So, but just did my best to try to cope through it, cope with it and to get through it.
So, did you grow up in a religious household?
My mom was a devout Catholic, and so we grew up in that religion. I saw my mom praying all the time. She was a prayer warrior, and that's where I gained my love for praying. She just led such an amazing example in terms of what it means to pray to the Lord and the importance of praying to Him and having a relationship with Him. On the flip side of that, and I mean no um, disrespect to anybody who's a part of any religion, specifically Catholicism, that religion was not for me. I heard what my mom was saying, and for me, going to a Catholic church was hearing something different. We never opened the Bible there. I never knew what a Bible was. The we said a lot of things that were written on a pamphlet. We all said them together. It was kind of it was just a routine to me. I just kept thinking, why are we doing this? What does this even mean? I didn't develop a personal relationship with the Lord in
Yeah.
the Catholic Church. And if you have, I'm happy
No,
for
I,
whoever
I
has.
I'm
To be
laughing
fair.
right now. I'm laughing right now because I call myself a Reformed Catholic because my grandfather's devoutness into the Catholicism, my experience. So when my mom married my stepdad, he was evangelical. His family was. So Saturday was mass and Sunday was church. And when I got old enough to be aware and decide, I said the same thing you did about the Catholic Church. Why are we reading from a pamphlet? Why are we doing calisthenics? Why is my mom not allowed to take communion because she's a former divorcee? Like, why do we have all of these rules and regulations that prohibit a relationship with God? Why is it fear based? And then
Yes.
on the other side, I was hearing love and community and acceptance, and I'm like, okay, these two worlds don't play with each other, so I don't like Catholicism. I'm not going to be Catholic. I'm going to follow Christ in my own way. And, anyone who's listened to my show hears me say it a million times. I find more connection to God sitting on a beach or in a mountain than I have ever found in a pew in a Catholic church. And so I'm very aware of, and yes, it works for some people. It's great. But it's, I wrote a paper when I was in high school that said religion is the worst thing that happened to God, because religion is a man-made activity. Spirituality is your personal connection. And so when you, as someone who saw your mother in this devoutness, had these disagreeing thoughts, how did you, in your mind, balance that? Because today, the person I know of you is very connected to God, your God. You're very, like, amen, right? Pray, right? But it's a connection. But
Yes.
it's not a
Yes.
fearful barrier. There's a relationship. So how did you
Yes.
go from the devoutness of Catholicism to the relationship with Christ?
Hmm. That's a good question. So I wasn't a devout Catholic.
But your mom
I
was.
was my mom was, yes. I was a devout prayer warrior, but we pretty much had the same mom. And I think you and I may be twins, because when I was in high school, I think it was in ninth grade, ninth or 10th grade, and they were calling us up for communion, and you could only receive communion if you had gone through catechism classes, CCD, which I'm not really sure. I didn't learn anything. I don't even know what happened. But I stood up, and my mom is still sitting, and the people are waiting, like, come on, everybody, let's go. And I said, holding up the line like the true authentic person I am. I said, Mom, let's go. Because I had never really noticed it before. And I think I was a freshman in high school. I said, Mom, let's go. Why aren't you going? And she said, I can't. Like, she was whispering, I can't. Like, you're holding up the line. Let's go. And I go, no, I'm not going until you go. Why are you not going? And she said, I can't go. Uh, I'm divorced. I was beaten. And I said, you were beaten. Let's go. And she said, I can't. After that, Daryl, I was done, because yes, fear-based. And I had visited another church with one of my friends. It was a Baptist church. And I thought, what's happening? This is completely different. And where do we go to confess? Because where's the priest? And yes, the religion, the Catholic religion for me, I was so in fear of God in an unhealthy way that I was even lying to the priest. I was like, I'm not going to tell him everything I did, because I'm going to be on my knees singing Hail Marys, Our Fathers, like with their clothes.
Right.
So I didn't even tell them everything. And then it was after being introduced to a completely different church that I'll say I was embarrassed later on as a young woman. I think I was 25, 24. Went to my first Bible study because I was invited, didn't know the Bible, didn't know that you could just, where you are in your house, in your car, in the shower, on the beach, you could just ask for forgiveness. You could tell God all of your sins. And this woman who was probably in her 40s, I was in, like I said, 25, 26, when I said, you can just ask for forgiveness and he'll forgive you. She was like, yes, honey. And I was like, no way, what? This isn't right. So I really had to learn from just researching myself, opening the Bible and reading it, questioning people. Thank God there are people that were there at this particular church that were there to mentor and help me, saw that I was clearly lost. And close to my mother's death, I told her, which was very difficult because I felt I was betraying her, because that's what the religion made me feel. Or that's what the religion made me feel. And I told her that I was going to another church, that it was a Bible based church, and I was learning the Bible. And I asked her if she knew who her Lord and Savior was. And she said, I do, yes. And I said, but Mama, has he been in your life? You've accepted him in your life? And she said, yes, I have. I know what you're talking about. And I said, okay, I just want to make sure, and I don't know, Daryl, I don't know. You tell me, maybe you can tell me. I don't know if I put myself in these positions. I want to be a cheerleader. I know what it takes to be a cheerleader, but then as soon as I'm um, voted in or elected to be in the job, I'm cutting my hair. I fit in, but I don't. I'm a virgin and they're not. I'm going to a Catholic church. I don't believe in it. I'm holding up the line saying, no, mom, we're doing this. Then I go to a different church. Like, I don't know if I'm put myself in these positions or the Lord puts me in these positions to learn more about myself, to learn more about who He is so that I can share with others. I don't know.
It feels to me like you put yourselves in those positions because someone who is desperately trying to be authentic, in your words, is putting herself in inauthentic positions to see if your feelings of authenticity are true. Am I willing?
Mm.
Am I willing to be authentic, or am I willing to just say I want to be authentic? And you test yourself over and over and over again for your true authenticity. How long will I stay in it? Will I do it? Will I conform? Will I whatever? Does that make sense?
That's true. Makes total sense. And I, being the stubborn person that I am, was in part of my mind was I'm not conforming. I'm not conforming. I do not want to do what other people are doing, but I know how to do it if I want to feel a part of anything because I felt so alone a lot until I found, my team weirdos. And I was like, yes, yes, I found the people that I can be my true authentic self. And I'm so comfortable being that way.
I am home with the weirdos.
Yes, yes, we're the weird ones because we're not
how,
the same.
how old were you when you found your husband?
So I've been married. This is my third marriage. And for me, the third marriage was the charm. I got married at a very young age to my first true love, my first true everything. And that was very young. Like I said, and I'm not afraid or embarrassed to say that I lost my virginity. It was probably at 21 years of age to my husband, who I thought, oh my goodness, he hung the moon. Very young, got married, and that didn't last long. We were just way too young. I didn't know what love was. I really didn't. And then married, was divorced, was single for a lot of years. Then met and married my second husband. We have our two children from together. And he was removed from our home. He sexually molested a family member and he was removed from the home. I was a stay-at-home mom at the time and overnight became a single mother, sole provider, sole spiritual leader, sole everything for our children, and struggled, really, really struggled for about 10 years providing for my children, and ultimately, though, leading them to want to seek the Lord, who God is. And He is so good because during that time of struggle, and the three of us on our knees praying to God just to help us, just to be with us, they saw answers to prayers. They knew that God was real. They may not have had their personal relationship with Him yet, but they knew that He was real. The way that we had prayed, like we all do, right? Even as adults, we have this expectation of if we pray this way or if we ask for these things, God's going to bring it to us. And He answered us, but in better ways than we ever could have imagined. And then after that, my husband now, precious man whom I feel like I just don't even deserve. The Lord literally just put him in he was in a prayer request, and I was on the prayer chain. I worked at our church for a while, and a mutual friend of ours had put in a prayer request for him. And I thought, well, I wonder what's wrong with him. Never talked to my husband now. We went to school together. Didn't even know we were in the same sixth grade class together until I saw a picture of us. Never talked to him, never wanted to talk to him, never wanted to know him because he was a troublemaker in school. And I didn't like to be in trouble. But once as an adult, here we are married now 11 years, yikes, 12 years. I saw the prayer request, prayed for him, and then we connected through Facebook. And he has taught me how to unlearn certain behaviors or what I think that I expect or deserve or don't deserve, which was a lot of narcissistic abuse from my ex-husband. It was a lot.
So
It was tough on him.
yeah, and I can relate to that because my ex-wife, my first wife, when I came into her life, her three kids, uh, 13, 10, and 2. And so I was an instant husband and father. And after we divorced, my youngest daughter is still my daughter today, 24 years later. So, but when I left, or when she left me, and then subsequently I left the state where we were living, I found out several years later that my ex-wife and her then current husband were sexually and physically abusing my daughter, and they had been
Mm.
doing so for 4 years. And so I asked my daughter, I said, why didn't you ever tell me any of this? And she said, I didn't want to lose both my parents because I knew you would go to jail, because she knew what my reaction would be. She knew
Mm.
my violent temper would have taken matters into my own hands. And so she endured these 4 years of trauma because she didn't want to lose me, as well as I've already lost her mom, who was an active part of this behavior. So when I watch my daughter grow up and I watch her transform and I watch her heal, I see now currently, because she's gotten to the other side of all that, the type of man that it takes to make her feel safe and make her feel
Mm.
comfortable and make her love herself, and is willing to walk with her through that process now that she's in her mid 20s. So I can only imagine what type of husband you're currently married to, because even though he was not responsible for what happened to any family member, he's still a part of your family, and it still brings a certain amount of guilt and shame to you that your husband, that you were married to a person who could do that. So for him to be able
Mm.
to love you through that and to help you forgive yourself and to love yourself, that is a gift from God to help you with what you're going through. So how does a person like that come into your life and make you feel the safety that you do?
Gosh. Well, first of all, what an amazing father you are. And I am so sorry for your daughter. I mean, the things that children and adults, right, take on from being abused, whether it's verbally, sexually, physically, emotionally, mentally. Boy, we take on things that we we're not supposed to. But I think a lot of it does have to do with shame and being worried that if I tell somebody, somebody's going to get mad at me or they're going to not talk to me anymore, which is my chapter in the book of Surrender Rise is called The Secret Within, because I held that in for years. My children didn't even know until they were in high school, I think. But
This is the book.
yeah, such a
Surrender.
great book. So many stories. Yes. It's such a privilege to be able to share in that book with so many other women who have amazing stories and testimonies to share. But to answer your question, what kind of man? I He definitely is a blessing. He is someone whom, when I met with him, I just thought, you know, what do I have to lose? We were friends, and I just decided that I was going to tell him everything about me, everything that had happened. He was the Lord let me know that he was a safe place for me to do that. We were just friends. Again, we're just friends. And the quality that stood out the most about my husband, Mike, is that he genuinely was listening. He genuinely heard me. He wasn't listening to respond. He was listening to me, which was the first thing that made me fall in love with him, because my ex husband never sat and listened to me. He was narcissistic and would tell me, you know, how to think or how to feel, or it was my fault that certain things were happening. But this man, Mike, that the Lord blessed me with, listened to me. I fell in love with that. I was like, wow, my gosh. And then I was able to tell him about all the baggage that I would bring to a relationship, all of my fears, quirks, um, that I was scared to let anybody in, because here we go again, marriage number 3. Oh my gosh, what's wrong with you, Tish? You're married 3 times. Wow, what's wrong with you? So he was very patient. The Lord sent me someone who was patient, gentle, understanding, very kind, and took a lot from me. And we had to go to counseling to learn how to disagree, because we couldn't talk to each other without me placing blame on him for things that he didn't do. And so we went to counseling. We knew pretty soon into the relationship that God was our foundation. We knew that the Lord was our foundation, that we could get through anything. It wasn't easy. It's not easy. If you're a Christian, you know that it's not easy just because you are a Christian or a follower or a believer of the Lord. That doesn't make things easy. It guides you in the right direction. You have him to lean on. You're not alone. And it's harder when we take things into our own hands. It's the true meaning of surrender. I did it just recently. I was just talking to you, Daryl, about something that I surrendered in my job. And boy, do I feel good now. And it took me so long to do it. And I'm like, why? Why? But God is good. God is good.
But we have a tendency to paint this picture in our brain and then rely on God to fulfill that picture. God, why aren't you doing this? God, why aren't you doing that? This is how it's supposed to be. And if we truly surrender, a different picture unfolds, a more magnificent picture unfolds, and a better picture unfolds. But we do have to surrender to the process and step into the faith that he has better vision than we do. And his picture will
Yes.
always be better than ours. So, when in your process, because you couldn't stay in a relationship that you've stayed in currently, if you somewhere along the line didn't learn to forgive yourself, not all the things that happened to you, not all the other people, but you, when did you forgive you, and what helped you do that?
Oh, my goodness. It was a lot. I think my father was a raging alcoholic. I love my dad, and wished I would have known him better. We lived under the same roof, and I really don't know much about him other than I was afraid of him. And beaten and abused and all of that. I did a lot of things because I thought, well, if I'm getting beaten, abused for things that I'm clearly not doing, or just because he's drunk and in a bad mood, I'm still getting beaten, might as well just go and do it. And I'm not proud of it, but I learned so much from my mistakes and the things that I did. It wasn't until, gosh, honestly, when COVID hit, which was not too long ago, I carried a lot of shame and guilt and had given it to the Lord, but taken it back, given it to the Lord, taken it back. And when COVID hit, while it was so tragic for so many losses, and I'm not discounting anybody's loss, and loss of employment, loss of life, loss of loved ones, all of that is horrific. But for me, it kept me at home, like most of us. I worked from home because I worked for my church. And I can remember sitting still with the Lord, just like he was sitting in a chair. And I remember talking to him. This might sound crazy, but I remember saying, okay, Lord, you sit there, like literally physically. I was like, you sit there. I'm going to sit here. I've got something to tell you. And I confessed to him that I've not forgiven myself. I didn't forgive myself for having a drunk driving accident when I was 19. I didn't forgive myself for being afraid of him. Like, he's forgiven us, but I was afraid of him. I didn't forgive myself for being honest with him. I felt like I was lying. So because I wanted to be good enough for him to love me and accept me as an adult. This was just in 2020. And the reason why I never wanted to have a video podcast, I only wanted to do audio, was because I was ashamed of the way that I looked, because of the scars on my face. My nose is crooked. I've got scars on my forehead, all from a drunk driving accident. Felt hideous and never wanted people to see my face ever, ever. And then the Lord brought Elena Rodriguez into my life, and she was a life coach for me. I had started an audio podcast back then, and that her coaching intertwined with self-work and talking to the Lord and telling him, I don't want anybody to see my face because I'm so ugly, because I had this car accident, because I was driving drunk at 19, and I run into this exit sign and my car flips across the highway, and here I have this 475 stitches in my head, and I'm ugly, and I did this, I chose to do this. And so I look in the mirror every day since that accident, which was in 1987, up until 2020, and thought, you are hideous. And the Lord said, I'm going to cry. Sorry. The Lord said, no, you're not. You were made in my image, and I forgive you, and I love you, and you have to forgive yourself. If you don't forgive yourself, then I can't. And I do. So please know that you were fearfully and wonderfully made, and you were made in my image, and I love you. And 2020, while very difficult, was eye-opening for me. It wasn't too much longer after that I totally, and I'm ready to go live. I'm ready to show my face. I'm ready to speak in public. And she said, okay, when are you going to do it? And I thought, I don't know. She goes, give me a date. Give me a date on the calendar. And when you go live, I will be there. If no one else is there, I will be there. And I said, okay. So I gave her a date. I went on Facebook Live. That was the social media path that I took. Went live for the first time and shared why I was going live and why I was showing my face and why I had not forgiven myself. And from that interview, from that Facebook Live, there was somebody that was at a radio station who told me they never watch Facebook Lives. We didn't even know each other for whatever reason, and we know why. But she clicked on my Facebook Live that very night after the live ended, she Facebook messaged me and she said, I want you to come to the radio station. I have a radio show and I want you to come and share your testimony. And I said, okay. And got off that, or finished messaging her. I messaged Elena Rodriguez and I said, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe this. After this live, I've got chills now. There's a lady listening at the radio station. She wants me to come and share my testimony. And I said, yes, I'm scared, but I'm going to do it scared. I'm going to do it afraid. I go to the radio station. I share my testimony. The owner of the radio station came in during a brief commercial break. I think the commercial break was a minute long. She came in and she said, I love your voice. I love your story. I would love for you to bring your podcast, which was audio only back then, No Judgment Here with Tish Ross. I want you to bring it to the radio station. And I thought, okay, well, let me think about it. And she said, you got a minute. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And right then, Daryl, I knew that I had forgiven myself. I knew that the Lord had something bigger and better for me. But again, it wasn't about me. He wanted me to do this podcast to share what he has done for me, yes, so that others will know who he is. And he's a good, loving God. He's a forgiving Father. He forgave me of this drunk driving accident a long time ago. It was me that didn't forgive myself. He has purpose for us. There's purpose behind, I don't want to say the pain, but there's purpose behind what we go through in our lives. And if you simply surrender, which I tried simply so many times, but didn't fully because I continued to hold on to the guilt. As soon as I did, look what happened. He said, here we go. You're going to the radio station. You're going to take your podcast and you're going to do what I called you to do. And that is to invite other people to share their testimonies so that other people will know who I am and how good I am. And what a blessing that has been.
Amen. And that is why, if people look at the beauty of a mosaic, they see this wonderful, beautiful picture of the mosaic. But if they really look at a mosaic, they find that it's made of broken glass. The beautiful picture comes from the brokenness. It doesn't come from the picture. And your beauty has been internal all along. And you learned at a young age, oh, I have to have long hair and I have to look pretty. I can't cut my hair and be who I want. Oh, now my face is damaged, so I'm no longer pretty. When your beauty has lived within you the entire time. And through that brokenness, your beauty gets to shine. And it has nothing to do with your physical look. It has to do with the light of the God that lives within inside you. Now, I will also say this, a lot of people, and I'm not accusing you of this, but a lot of people use God and religion as a crutch. God will do this. God will do that. God will do this. If I pray here, if I pray that, if I do the 17 Hail Marys and the 46 rosaries, God will do this. God will do this. That is such a waste of the relationship with God, because that's not how it works. It's not a crutch. And I heard a preacher say once, and this is one of the few times that I've agreed with preachers, but he said, everybody is waiting on God. But what if God is waiting on you? And I can give you the most beautiful shovel, but you will never get a hole till you put a foot to it. You have to do your part. And forgiveness, in most cases, is our part. Not forgiveness of others. That's easy. Forgiveness of ourselves. That's the hard part. Rebuild from the inside, heal from the inside, and the external will take care of itself. And once you learn that, look what happened. And now you have this podcast, real people, real stories, real talk. And now it's also on Roku and Amazon Fire soon to come, and on Google Play and on Stream. You are shining your light through your message because you forgave yourself. Because God had already done it.
He had. And Daryl, you speak so beautifully. I just love the way that you speak. You life coach. I, when you said that the beauty was, you had it all along. And, but yes, you hit the nail on the head. The whole time I was thinking it was a struggle. It was between being authentic or fitting in, being authentic and feeling blah about myself, or trying to fit in and look like everybody else and still feeling blah about myself. Maybe felt accepted for a little while because I was doing things to fit in. But you speak so beautifully, and I thank you so much for your beautiful words and words of encouragement. And it is true when you truly surrender. And most of the time, for me, it's when, unfortunately, I've tried everything I can, but, and all I had to do was surrender. And then the relief that comes from truly surrendering to God when he's waiting for you. And I'm sure he's looked at me a lot of times and shook his head. Thought,
He's looked at all of us and
Tish,
shook
what
his
are you
head.
doing?
He has given us the slow bus for a reason because we have all boarded it at some point in time or another. And thank you for your compliment about the words, but for my entire life, and I'm 60 going on 61, for my entire life, I have left a lot of conversations with both people I know and complete strangers and gone, where the heck did that come from? But then I stop and I go, oh, I know where that came from. Because I have always called myself the modern day burning bush. None of this comes from me. It all comes through me from him. And
Exactly.
so I take no credit for the beautiful words. They flow from God's, wisdom through my mouth, but that's what it's supposed to do, right? So
That's right.
when did you start to realize, ooh, life on forgiveness side is so much better than life on beating myself? And here's one of the things that I hate about religion: those floggers, those people that they think they have to do penance 25 times a day and beat the heck out of themselves. I can't even tell you in the 11 years that I've been married to my wife how many times I've told her to put Thor's hammer away. Stop beating yourself up. It is not going to give you any satisfaction. So, what was it like when you suddenly realized, ooh, the life on this side of forgiveness is so much better on the beating myself up side? What was that experience
Mm.
like for you?
I think that it actually came, the Lord was trying to get my attention for so long, right? And I think that moment came after, yes, after he, because he knows who we are, and he revealed to me that he is in control, and he revealed to me that he is good and that he's here for us. And I can say this for a fact that whenever I was a struggling single mother and my ex-husband had the only car that I had to take our children to school or to doctor's appointments, they were little, 2.5 and 7. He had the car towed out of the driveway, and he had called and said, "Hey, go look out the window." Even though we weren't talking, he hadn't been incarcerated yet. He said, "Hey, go look out the window." And I did, and the car was being towed. And I said, "Why would you do that?" Because I was a stay-at-home mom before, like I said, overnight. And he just laughed and he said, "Figure it out." So my children and I were on our knees praying, and I really didn't know exactly what to pray for other than we were just praying for transportation of some sort, whether that was a neighbor who was willing to give us rides to school when it was raining or cold. Was it a me being able to afford a taxi at the time when they didn't have Uber and all that? Was it that a bus would, you know, show up in our town? A bus stop would show up for us to catch whenever we need to go do things. And So we would pray, just please, God, help us. And my children would say, my son, who's a youth pastor now, but at the time he was 7, and he would say, please, God, help my mommy, help us. And I found a church. I hadn't been to church in a long time, and my neighbor drove us to church. And I walked up to this church that I'd only known about through someone had mentioned and said, hey, you ought to try this church in Burleson. And through my brokenness, we got a ride, and we walked up to the front, started walking to the entrance doors, and they had servants there that were welcoming. And no one had ever asked me how I was doing, because not many people, nobody knew really except for my family what my ex-husband had done. And this man opened the door and he said, welcome to church. Good to see you guys. How are you doing, ma'am? Daryl, I lost it. I started bawling, and he said, come on in. Just come on in. It's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. And I lost it. I just started bawling, and I don't even remember what I told him. All I know is that at some point, I guess I said something to him. I don't, and he said, I guess he told me to write a letter to the church. And I had no idea that this church had a Cars for Christ program. I had no idea. I was in survival mode. I just knew I needed to get to church. I needed God to help me. I didn't know. So I get a phone call 3 days after I had visited the church. And the pastor there said, guess what? We got a car for you. And I said, no way. There's no way. Who's going to give me a car? And he said, we've got a car for you. Do you have a ride to come and get it? And I said, I'll get a ride. And that was what opened the door to me, knowing that God is for us. He is real, and he cares for us. And it opened my children's, it was bigger than just getting a car. It opened my children's eyes to knowing God is real. Your mother and you guys are not, I've not left you alone. I've not abandoned you. And so they know that he is real. And then that carried me to knowing, okay, he is real. To me, that was a miracle. And still, that was, gosh, it was in 2003 when that happened. And I continued to get to know who the Lord was through going to church, through serving, through prayer, through talking to him. But it's amazing the damage that a religion can do to you, because I was so afraid, because I wasn't perfect. That's what I learned at the church. You couldn't be divorced, so you couldn't get communion. You tell these prayers to a priest, and you're on your knees praying and asking for forgiveness, and you could only receive it through saying all these prayers. So a lot of that shaped me to who I was, unfortunately. And it was really until that happened, and I had nothing but to surrender to God. Seriously, literally had nothing and nobody else, because it was not a secret I was going to tell anybody. And the Lord broke me more and took that sin, that pride, that I was not about to ask anybody for help. You don't ask, my dad told me, you do not ask anybody for help. I was so at his mercy that I learned how to ask for help, and then learned that he's real, and that I could have a real conversation with him, and that he's forgiven me of everything, and that I was ready to forgive myself. I was finally ready. It took a long years to forgive myself. But boy, the freedom on the other side of knowing how good God is, and that he's never left me, and he's never abandoned me. Even as an abused child, he was there. There were times when I thought, why is this happening to me? Why am I being beaten? Why am I on my knees? And why is my dad an alcoholic? And he never left me. But that revelation didn't come until I was an adult. So being on the other side of that, I'm here to tell anybody about him. I'm here to tell everybody about him, and might have a platform where everybody else can do the same.
Well, that's the beauty of learning a connection and a relationship with God, is that you find out that the middleman is not necessary. You can do what you did, where you just set him down and say, "Hey, God, here's a conversation I need to have with you," right? So I'm going to ask you a question
Yes.
that you ask some of your guests. What do you want the legacy of Tish Ross to be? Even in your brokenness, even in your darkened past, even in the things that you've walked through, what do you want your legacy to be?
Mm. Gosh, I hope that when I'm gone, that people will remember me, my children, who will continue and carry the legacy of it's never too late to start a relationship with the Lord, that prayer is powerful, God is good, and that He forgives you, that He loves you, that you don't have to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect. There's nobody here that is perfect in order to start a relationship with Him. And in His words, do not be afraid. That's what I want people to know. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to go to the Lord. Do not be afraid to be your true, authentic self. Don't hide that beauty. Start today. You can do it. You can be your true, authentic self today. And that if you haven't asked the Lord to be your Savior or to come into your life, you can do that today. You can do that today.
And you don't need the calisthenics of the Catholic Church to do so. That's just my piece. Sorry. um, final question. Final question. What does a warrior spirit or having a warrior spirit mean to Tish? Because you've certainly lived it.
Oh my goodness. Oh, thank you. If I could paint a picture, Daryl, it would be those of us and everybody else that has continued to stand up and fight. As soon as you are knocked down, to stand up, it would be a portrait of people holding up that shield, to putting on the shoes, putting the belt on, to putting the crown on or the helmet on, and people just being warriors together and fighting these battles when people can't fight these battles on their own, to know that, man, we're here for you, with you, and we will continue to be here until you can pick up your cross and carry it for yourself. I see a warrior spirit in this beautiful picture of everybody just coming together and battling for the good of the Lord. You do that, Daryl. You do that.
Well, I appreciate it, and I thank you. And it's been a pleasure for having you join me today to share this part of your journey. I have an open door policy for you anytime if you want to come on and pontificate and just talk or share more of your journey, whatever the door is open. So feel free, and I'm honored
Gosh,
to be in the same circle as people like you. So thank you.
you too, my friend. I am honored, and it's such a privilege to come on and be able to share a little bit about how good God is, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity on your platform. Thank you so much, Daryl.
Alrighty. Well, if you'd like to connect with Tish, you certainly can do so on her social platforms: YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And as always, thank you for joining us on this edition of A Warrior Spirit. We're now on all the major platforms as well as Roku via the Prospera TV app. So be sure to like or subscribe to catch all the episode. And as always, the journey is sacred, the warrior is you. So remember to be inspired, be empowered, and embrace the spirit of the warrior within.
It's not just about the fight, it's how we rise from it.